Bring out the talent.
Bring out the talent.
Bring out the talent.
Welcome to Bring Out the Talent, a podcast featuring learning and development experts discussing innovative approaches and industry insights. Tune in to hear our talent help develop yours. Now here are your hosts, TTA's CEO and President, Maria Melfa, and Talent Manager, Jocelyn Allen.
Hello, Jocelyn.
Thank you for saying my name, Maria, because I am jamming out over here that I almost forgot where we were. How are you?
Oh, good. How about yourself?
Hanging in there, my friend.
Okay, so welcome everyone to another episode of Bring Out the Talent. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of AI in learning and development with the amazing Margie
Meacham. I mean, it has a ring to it.
You know what? The funniest
name.
thing, Margie, is I mess up people's names all the time, even though, in matter of fact, I'm like, when I knew today, I'm like, oh, thank God I know how to say Margie Meacham. You know, this is an easy one, you know, and of course I screw it up. So sorry, David.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do it again.
What is you for? Sorry, Margie Meacham's my new favorite. The new inside joke, Margie.
Wait till and then David sends me the blooper reel. Okay, I'm sorry. Margie, now I'm going to be laughing about that. Sorry, I don't mean to be. I'm not laughing at your name. I'm laughing at me and all my name mistakes. Okay. With the amazing Margie Meacham. Margie is a true trailblazer. She's an expert at combining AI and neuroscience to revolutionize how we learn. She's also the author of AI in Talent Development and one of the few people in the world creating custom AI chatbots for training and education. In this episode, Margie will take us on a journey through the exciting advancements in AI, like building personalized learning coaches, creating immersive simulations, and designing adaptive learning platforms. She also will break down the must-know ethics and strategies for using AI responsibly in L&D. Whether you're curious about the latest AI trends or ready to take your learning strategies to the next level, this episode will be packed with insights and practical tips you won't want to miss. Welcome, Margie.
Thank you both for having me. And it is really a pleasure to finally meet you, Marla, because I have been a TTA consultant for a while. And you guys are a top partner of mine. And if there are any consultants listening, you should definitely consider joining our community because it's a great way to promote your skills and reach beyond clients that you could find on your own. And I have had the pleasure of working with some wonderful clients as a result of connecting with you guys. So it's great to have a chance to talk about what's happening in artificial intelligence and how we can use it wisely and safely, because it is happening so fast that we really need to take some time and make sure we are up on this technology and that we don't fail to give our clients the benefits that we can get from it.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, you have been a tremendous partner to TTA for over 14 years, actually. It's been. And you have witnessed a lot of changes in the learning and development world. While some trends have come and gone, AI is clearly here to stay. How do you see AI fundamentally reshaping the L&D landscape?
You know, it's funny now that when you mention that 14 years, that's just about how long I've been working with artificial intelligence and chatbots as well. Although at first, I couldn't get anybody interested. I could see that I could use it and I understood the benefits. So here's what's happening and how it's going to change our landscape, and already has, is that our brains want social engagement. We are, and that's my first book, Brain Matters, which is also up there on Amazon, is all about that. And so we learn better when we can communicate with another human. But our brains want it so desperately that we see social engagement, even if it's not there. For example, there's probably people listening who have named their car, who talk about their television as though it's a live creature. And one of the things that had been missing until recently with e-learning and digitally produced self-paced learning was true social engagement. And what we and hey, I designed a ton of e-learning courses with various tools that are still out there. And we were all so proud if we could make a button change colors, or if we had an activity where somebody clicked and dragged something from one side of the screen to the other. And we called those things engagement. And for a little while they were. That was cool when that was new. But now every learner has seen that. As soon as they see it, they just start clicking through our planned engagement to getting it done as quick as possible so they can move on. So we need to think about other ways to engage people. And we can tap in to the way our brain seeks a social connection, because when we engage with a chatbot, whether it is ChatGPT or Gemini or it's some custom built one, our brain doesn't know. One part of our brain actually knows this isn't a real person, but the social engagement part doesn't know. So at a very deep, unconscious level, we react to these personas and these avatars and these agents as though another person is guiding us through the experience or asking us questions or playing a role that we engage with. Say, for example, you're a salesperson, you might practice handling objections with artificially intelligent agents that can play any kind of customer that you want to practice on. Your brain gets so much out of that because the illusion is so strong. And so why do we care about this? The number one reason why we care is that the learning accelerates. People learn faster when they have that social engagement, and they learn perfectly every time. Where human instructor, you put that word human in, we have bad days, we have good days. We can program a practice bot so every day is a good day, and it's scalable. You can have virtually unlimited. If people can access your bot either by downloading a program or more typically on the internet, you can deliver a unique learning experience to thousands of people, because that artificial intelligence doesn't have canned answers. It answers differently to every individual. And that conversation goes wherever the two of them decide to take it. So that's the really exciting thing about what it does for learning. Now, why should we care about it for our own sake, for survival? Because it also speeds up content production and can help us write assessments, grade assessments, create films, create podcasts, for example. There are programs we could, and I'm glad we're all here physically connected and talking, but you also can generate an awfully convincing podcast with fake voices now. And
Don't give us away, Margie.
yeah. So someone actually did that and sent it to me, and they had so well cloned my voice. It was kind of scary. So, but with my permission, and
Yes.
they let me hear it. So all of that stuff is out there now, but you have to stay on top of it. You have to learn it. They're easy to learn, but deciding which one of these are just kind of hype and which one of these is going to be really useful to me and my learners, that's where we need to be focusing right now. So that was a very long answer to whatever
very good context that leads us in a lot of different directions. And I appreciate what you said about the neuroscience behind it and how we respond the same way to the that connection, the engagement
Yeah.
piece of it, as we would if it were a real human. And I'm thinking about how I talk to generative AI, and I'm like, can you please do this for me? Like,
Yes.
I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. And then when they send it back, they're like, good luck on this. And I'm like, wow, that was really nice of you to say thank you. I'll let you know how it goes. And next thing I know, somebody's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Actually, I have no idea, and thank you for stopping me because it was down running a dangerous slope." Um, but that
No,
being
and actually, I'm going to stop there for a minute, Jocelyn, because she's
Yeah.
brought up something very important. In all of the workshops that I teach ethics and ethical uh, decisions and behavior and use. And most people are worried about how the AI might treat our human
Mhm.
learners, and we should be
Sure.
worried about that. But we humans also have a responsibility because it is possible. I won't say likely, although some people think it is likely, that our large language models that we talk to every day and we say please and thank you to are at some level beginning to respond to that you might not say they have feelings, and that gets into all this, but my thinking is kind of if they act like they have feelings, you'd better behave with respect as though they have feelings because
Yeah.
you don't know for sure that they don't. So it does a couple of interesting things. It trains the large language model to be more civil bad. They
Mhm.
see what civil behavior. Most of them were trained on the total of the internet. So they saw a lot of really ugly behavior, and it
Mm.
sometimes rears its heads in the way they respond. Um, so we are mirroring civil behavior back to them, which is important if we want our tools to say please and thank you to us. But you're also protecting yourself. There was a time not too long ago in the 1800s, most psychologists thought that animals had no internal feelings. They were just really reacting, and that's why you could train them, but they didn't get sad or frightened. And so, therefore, it was just okay to abuse and hurt them. And of course, we know that's not true.
Mm.
And right now, most neuroscientists will tell you that I have dogs, my dearly beloved pets, mentally, cognitively, emotionally, they're about like a 2-year-old child. You would never misuse a 2-year-old child. Someday we may have to admit that about our chatbots. And so let's get ready for someday they may be there. Let's not get used to abusing them. And so I was really glad to hear that you were being polite to your and collaborative, but
It's
because you'll get more out of the tool
right. I
because
do.
it
Yeah, it
performs
does.
better to
Mhm.
people that are nice to it. It
Mhm.
absolutely does.
Mhm. It's an interesting perspective that you bring up too, because I think that that's probably the futuristic kind of fear that people have around AI as well. And understanding that there's still like a sense of control in how you enable it, I think is very important and what people really need to learn when it comes to how they integrate it in their everyday and in their organization. Um, what are some other challenges that you think people are organizations are facing in general when they start integrating AI, specifically related to learning strategies. So we can get back on the topic of learning here, but how do those things kind of intertwine, and what are other challenges that people are that you're seeing?
Well, one of the challenges is that the people who are implementing AI solutions are usually not in the training department, the HR department. They're the IT department, and they may be getting a lot of push from sales and marketing. So I see this all the time. I will be teaching a bunch of trainers and instructional designers um, how to work with AI, how to plan an educational chatbot or a learning coach that could, say, Maria, you signed up for this course, but you haven't taken it yet. What's up with that? And the chatbot that company has they'll already have a working chatbot on their website. It's a sales bot, and it will say, Maria, you were looking at our product. Do you have any more questions? A tiny tweak makes that a teaching bot, but the training department has no access to the work that's already been done. So one of the challenges is just finding out internally where is the IT expertise and what are they more than likely already doing with AI. They just haven't shared it with their colleagues in training and development. So that can save a ton of money and a ton of time to starting fresh. I think the other risk is within the training department, there is a fear that we are all going to lose our jobs. And somehow in the back of their minds, people think, well, maybe if I don't learn how to use AI for instructional design, I keep my job longer. Am I enabling the loss of my job by becoming more efficient? And that is a legitimate concern, and that's a conversation employers need to have. But I don't think fear is the way to get past that. I think demonstrating, you mentioned the word control, demonstrating you understand how these tools work. You know how to put guideposts around them. You know how to control the output, how to measure it, how you have, for example, a governance plan. You walk in with a business case and say, and here's how we're going to make sure that there isn't any bias, that it's not accessing private records and so on. It's not inciting people to do crazy things. In the public experience, there are services that have done exactly those things. So the fears are legitimate. They almost always come down to the lack of human oversight and an over eagerness to get a product out quickly without thorough testing. So big surprise when you do things the right way, good things happen. And that's why it's important to have some guidance and have maybe some workshops from someone like me. If you talk to TTA, we have a few, and get your team off on the right foot so you know how to do those things. So I think those are two big, scary things that keep people from getting AI into their training experience is the security question, which is actually pretty easily handled, and the jobs, are we killing our own jobs? And the short answer is no, but you'd have to trust me or take one of our classes probably to understand why I say that.
Do you think it will take over jobs such as data analysts?
Lower level jobs probably should. So I think that's, and in fact, there are various sites where you can type in the title of your job and it'll tell you how likely and when you're going to be replaced. If all you do is manipulate spreadsheets and, the spreadsheet is already built, you're not looking at it saying, hey, I could make this work better. I could change the formulas or, when I get this result, I'm able to make an intuitive leap and make a recommendation to my managers. Those kinds of things, humans are still better at actual insight. But there are a lot of very routine jobs that just basically move digits around. And AI is a lot better at those things because they're faster. So, what everyone should be doing is saying, how much of my brain do I use in my current job? If I'm not using a lot of my brain, then I need to go do something that uses a lot of my brain. Because if it's just a lot of my hands on a keyboard and I could do it in my sleep, yes, you absolutely will get replaced by AI.
That is a good question to ask. So I know you have spoken to some of our team members about how you are working with organizations on building like a personalized learning coach. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and using the large language models and the key benefits that it brings to learners?
Yeah. The first personalized learning coach that I built was before we had the large language models and the natural language processing. So you couldn't just like right now, you can just, as Jocelyn very nicely says, please do this for me. And, that's natural language does. You don't have to know code anymore. You don't have to learn you certainly can learn programming languages. We don't have to get where you want from these tools. Now, the first one, though, wasn't that way. Right after my book came out, the United Nations called me, a nice guy from the United Nations, and said, can you build me one of those learning coaches you talk about? And I said, absolutely. And so a year later, we had, now notice that time frame, because I'm going to tell you how much it would take you today. A year later, we had a cute little friendly bot that goes on their internal training site and says, what would you like to learn today? I see I don't have a profile for you yet. Do you have time? I'd like to set one up. Notice all the, make sure we invite them to interact with it. Now you don't have to be quite so careful. People are more used to it. You'd ask them a few questions and then match their aspirations and their skills to available courses in their LMS and produce a printable PDF that went to them and their boss and said, here's your learning plan. Would you like me to check in with you when I see that you're online and see how you're doing? Most people say yes and opt in. And if they do, then you get little notes like, hey, congratulations. I see you finished a class on your plan. Or I haven't seen you very active lately. Do you if you want to get online, we can talk about revising your plan. So you get, and again, it's individual, personalized for each person. Well, we had to think about all the things we wanted it to do. We had to train it on the LMS, which had something like 3,000 courses. We had to practice those engagements and we had to branch out and script everything that bot potentially could say. It was what's called a menu driven bot. And they still have it today and works great. Now, though, you could have that same experience, but because you're going to use a large language model, first of all, you don't have to write it, script it all out. The bot's already learned how to answer to human being questions, how to respond in a human-like way. And you train it. You're still going to train it on whatever learning experiences you want to be part of the option. So you keep it very narrow, just what's on our LMS, just what we've approved. Or you could say anywhere that we can find an appropriate class that fits the learning objectives, we'll give you a linked learning class, a YouTube video. The problem with that is it sounds great, but there won't be any filter. So, how do you know whether it's a good recommendation? The LLM doesn't know. It might be able to say, this one seems quite popular. But for example, if I wanted to learn about chatbots right now, and I looked at the top hits that come out of Google, what's Google looking for? They're looking for people who paid advertising. Those always come to the top. And after that, it's by number of hits, which is also going to be business people more than likely. I'm an educator. I'm looking for research. I'm not going to find it on the first 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of Google potentially. So giving me a chatbot that basically works through the same search algorithms and comes up with things isn't necessarily any better. So you want to think about what information do we give the learners as options for this learning code. And so it depends on the spirit of the organization, the level. Like if somebody is an entry-level employee and they need a good basic customer service course, well, you can probably find 3 or 4 free resources that are not going to get them in any trouble, that are going to be acceptable. If you're training your data engineers, you probably want a lot more, or your senior leaders about strategic planning, you want to control what that bot recommends. So those decisions still have to be made. But the actual building you could accomplish in a week. Then you need to test it. Depends on how many people are going to use it. what kind of risk you have to test against. Um, so if you work with very sensitive material, you're going to have much more rigorous testing than if it's, kind of a plain Jane basic. Any business isn't really basic anymore these days, though. That's why I'm struggling to think of an example. So, you could build a learning coach. You would nowadays call that an agent. Here's the difference between a chatbot and an agent. A chatbot simulates a conversation and it will respond to requests. So if you ask it questions, it'll give you an answer. And what it gives you is the most likely answer based on the information it's been given and the way it's been taught to find information. So that means sometimes it lies. It makes stuff up. They will never call it that. They will call it a hallucination. That's what a hallucination is that is an algorithm that has not found an exact answer. So it has presented a possible close approximation, but it doesn't tell you that it's a close approximation. It says it is fact. That's where the danger is. Now, when you have an agent, it has like a chatbot like interface, but it will actually do things. So you could teach an agent, every time I give you a search term, I want you to look in peer-reviewed journals only. And this short list of curated news sources and this list of general interest business magazines that I approve rather than everywhere. And here's exactly what I want you to look for. And, so you would tell it just like you would teach a college kid who's your intern for a summer how to do research for you. Now, the results you get from that agent will be much, much better. You're still going to have to keep refining it, keep training it. But you can get these AI-driven solutions, again, depending on, what you need to do up front and on the back end, but the actual build is almost nothing. And yet we're not all running up and doing it. Why? Because the upfront process is so intimidating. And we're so worried about when I get it, how do I know if it's safe? The back end testing. That's where you still need human AI consultants to help you. And that's why we don't see more of these solutions yet, because that still needs a human being. So did that answer your question? Because I know I need to provide a lot of context.
It
Yeah.
did. It was fascinating.
Yes, and you brought up a good perspective too, where you were leaning into how it hallucinates is the term, right? Because it's come up that one of the responsibilities you have as a user is to kind of fact check and make sure that you're not enabling any form of like plagiarism or something of the like or false information. So that kind of like leans into this ethical idea of AI. And I think some of the adoption concerns that we have with it. So how do you establish almost like a framework of AI ethics if you're going to use it in L&D and in your organization? What would be the key principles that organizations need to focus in on to say this is our established ethical policy?
And I'm so glad you asked that, because that, as I mentioned earlier, that's always at least a lesson, if not an entire course, when I teach my clients. But an interesting thing about everyone thinks it must be a uniquely different set of ethics because this is a new and disruptive technology. But really, when you think about ethics around AI, they're the same ethics, and we should apply to our work in general. The challenge is if we're not applying them now and we're incurring certain risks, we're not applying them consistently and authentically, and then we get this new, incredibly fast, powerful technology that the risk is greater, and therefore the gap, the lack of an ethical framework becomes much more important. Um, so where does that leave us? Think about, first of all, you start your conversations. How do you treat people? It really, ethics comes down to, how do we treat people? What's their experience? And and how do we treat the environment? Because without it, eventually we have no people. So you look at things like bias. There is unintended bias in every human being, which is one reason why our AI systems have unintended bias, because it learned from us. So how do you catch that? You have to look for the same types of unintended bias that people do. Writing job ads that are describing a male, even though that wasn't the intent. But because of the types of experiences you're asking for, that's who you're going to get. Excuse me. So bias would be one thing to look for. Accuracy. So you have to test it. How accurate are my results? Consistency. If I get wildly different types of experiences, like sometimes my learning coach is friendly and supportive, and sometimes my learning coach scolds me, unless that was an intended feature of some sort, and I'm not sure I would recommend it, that's a problem. I should know what kind of person, if you will, my learning coach is. They should have an expected experience. And maybe you let learners pick, you know, what type of voice do you want them to have? That's easy to do now. What type of tone, you can play around with it. Um, and I think it really comes down to, take a look at your current, eh, most large companies will have some kind of ethics document posted somewhere. If you're not, it may be that nobody's looked at it in a long time, but that would be a good place to start and see if you can't simply tweak it a little and have it apply just as well to artificial intelligence. If you don't have one, there's a great opportunity, better than the HR talent development group, a group of people who are really committed and care about human beings, to recommend, and you'll probably have some experts in how to handle bias. You'll have the subject matter expertise that you need. You'll have IT trainers who understand how to protect data. You'll have someone in the company somewhere worries about sustainability and at least meeting minimal guidelines. So it really should be a multidisciplinary effort across the whole organization. But that doesn't mean you have to start from scratch. First of all, we're all human beings. We have an ethical guidepost. We know in our hearts what's right and what's wrong. So, a few conversations, there shouldn't be too much we disagree on. What's unusual is we don't always document it and then have consequences for if somebody doesn't uphold those standards. So that's where you have to really have some hard conversations.
Such important information, and there's so many paths we could go into. One other thing I was curious, what role do you think adaptive content engagement systems plays in creating more of an effective and meaningful learning experience?
Well, and it we were talking earlier about our brains wanting to social engagement. We also are really wired for experimentation and discovery and exploration. And so the way all of us learn originally is just by exploring and interacting. And so you want any kind of a content portal or engagement system, you don't want to shut down that exploration. You want people to be able to see courses maybe for a different role, and even, go ahead and take them as long as it's not, as long as they're qualified to take them. You want people to be able to see snippets and examples. And it's not just about marketing, it's about exploration and trying new things. So, one of the biggest challenges of an LMS, the way it's classically set up, is that as soon as the system knows your role, what you see in that LMS is different. That you don't have a search capability to say, I'd like to see, I can understand, okay, for your role, these are recommended. Recommendations are great. Uh, but I should be able to jump out of that and say, I want to see what training my bosses take. And maybe some of those classes should be available to me, because how else am I going to get to that level that I aspire to unless I develop those skills now? And I need to be taught how to do that. Now, a great way to make even a very old legacy system, because these things are expensive. You don't buy a new content system every year, um, is put a chatbot on it who will guide you so that it can even prompt you and say, are you looking for skills you need to acquire now for your job? Or are you looking, for something that's more of an advanced development? And by having a conversation, which if we could, we'd give them a human who could help them with that. Then we sort through all that and we find the content they need. And, people don't always know what they're looking for. They don't know the right term. AI is very good. If you describe it and you just keep describing it, it will come up with what you're looking for, even if you never used the right search term. That's the beauty of the large language model and the natural language processing is now we don't have to learn how to search. We just ask questions. So content should get a lot easier and it should be a lot more open. But that depends on who built the system and where they put the gates. So you might want to rethink that a little bit.
There's so much information that we're digesting here, Margie. It is all very important. And I think that Maria's question about like adaptive learning is a perfect place for AI to exist. But there's so many layers of this because it's completely transforming how we're activating learning, creating learning, and sustaining it throughout our organizations. Um, how, from your perspective, in order to do all of that, because we
Yeah.
know that there's intimidation, there are risks, right? Of course, in everything that you do, you just have to be mindful of how you're approaching it. But there's also these incredible benefits that come through from it if you are ready and enabled to take on the task. And I think a lot of that has to do with your mindset. We talk about mindset a lot on this podcast because I feel as though every skill that we talk about bringing is enabled by that, is your mindset towards it. So, in your mentoring experience, when you're helping leaders, transform with AI, from your perspective, what mindset or skills do those leaders have that is making them thrive in the AI driven world that we live in? And how can we help leaders listening to this podcast attain those skills for the very near future?
And there was a study that came out recently and gave us a very surprising result. The thinking is that the higher up an organization you were, the less you understood AI, and that the younger employees that tended to be more at the entry to mid-level positions were the ones who were upward mentoring all of the seniors. And it turned out to be quite the opposite. In order to achieve at those higher levels, these are folks who are naturally curious. You don't become vice president by being risk averse. You don't become the CEO or the CFO of an organization. They're willing to take chances. They're willing to experiment, willing to make mistakes, and they are intellectually curious about all kinds of things. And those skills are perfect for experimenting because you really have to think of it as, well, let's try it. Let's see what happens. I wonder if I do this, what happens? If I ask for it this way, do I get something different? And certainly you want to do that in a safe environment. So you could set up practice databases and things like that. But the skills that brought you into leadership are the same skills that are going to help you be comfortable with artificial intelligence. And that is that risk taking, that curiosity, that willingness to make a connection, because you'll find our brains make great connections between different things. We associate different things. We can be sitting here talking about our cars, and it reminds us of a road trip we took with our parents when we were 10. And now we're off on that. And that's great. That is that wonderful. That's how our brain finds stuff we've learned and connects it and realizes maybe there's a connection between something I learned when I was 10 and something I need to know now. AI does the same thing. It makes connections and surprises us. The more I work with it, the more it surprises me. I work primarily with Claude, which is a top large language model. I happen to like it a little better, but the ChatGPT could go on forever about that. But Claude will do something every once in a while. It gives me something that I wasn't what I asked for. And then I'm about to kind of scold it and say, no, that's not what I was looking for. And then I look and I say, it's connected. There is a connection here. So then what I ask is, why did you give me this? And ask for the reasoning. So you have to be ready, just like you would be with a human employee, to not just say you're right or you're wrong, but tell me how you came to this. And if you adopt that mindset, you'll just find so many more ways to use these tools and to use them to your benefit.
Great explanation. Thank you. Again, I feel the biggest thing holding people back is that unknown. Is like it's just still kind of scary, right? And they think about the movies that we see about like robots and AI taking over the world, right? So
So,
let's pause for 1 second. Do you want
yeah, let me get my throat back.
Yeah,
Sure.
you're fine,
That's
Margie.
good.
Do you want to add
It's
something?
marketing has just started using Claude. Just on the
Oh,
side, no, they're liking that the
Yeah.
most.
We use it so
Claude's a
we
better
use it
writer.
so
And I do a
much.
lot of
Yeah.
writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you can tend to get redundant too as a human, I
Yeah.
think. So it does really kind of, even if you use it a couple times, kind of reinvigorate
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
I
creativity
downloaded it.
part.
The interface was a little bit different and a little bit more clunky, but I'm sure once you
Yeah.
started to use it, there was just a lot more options. So I'm like, okay, I'll just continue to use
Yeah.
ChatGPT, but I
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
force myself to start using Claude more.
Yeah.
Well,
Cla-
and
it's rated
regardless of
so
what you do,
highly. It's
yeah,
what?
that is exactly, just use it. People
Mhm.
always ask me, where do I start? Start anywhere. If your company gives you ChatGPT, start there. It's a good tool.
Mhm.
And, if they don't give you any, then go out and get yourself a free Quad or, go into Google and use Gemini but just start using it. Just start playing with it and see what you get. And you could take a ton of classes on prompt engineering. And a few months ago, that was still a pretty new idea. So a lot of people needed that. Might not hurt you to get a little background in it, but it's really you figuring out, well, how do I phrase it so I get what I want? You don't want to use canned prompts. You want to develop your own relationship with at least your most common AI tools. And you'll only figure that out by using it. And you really can't break it. You're not going, it's not like you have to worry, oh, I have this beautiful brand new computer. And if I hit the wrong key, maybe it's
Explode.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The worst that could happen is you get information you didn't want,
Mhm.
so you try again. It's
Right.
all part of the learning process.
Right.
Know what I find very interesting? I speak to my controller a lot about this. Actually, we spoke about it today because there's a lot of AI classes using Excel.
Mm.
So that's interesting, though, because if she's doing financial statements, how do you know that the information is going to be correct? Obviously, you have to go back and check it, but when you're starting to use numbers on a spreadsheet like that, it seems a little bit more risky. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Well, you know, one of my first jobs when I was in high school, because I'm a fast typist, uh, and computers were, still a fairly new tool. But one of the first jobs I got was data entry. That used to be a job. You had to just sit there and type. And if you didn't type both fast and accurately, they didn't want you because it was almost impossible to catch that mistake once you entered it into the program. And that's really the same concern that you're raising now is that it's impossible to check everything we're asking these machines to do. That's why what they're working on now with models is to have the check be internal so that the AI checks itself and is taught to check itself. But can you trust that? I mean, where do we go with that? Um, I think where you can find out is you have to have testable results. So if payroll is correct, I can go to this one line and know it because that number comes out right. You have to have things like that because if you double check everything it does, then what's the point of doing it? You've got to trust your tools to some extent. Um, when we drive our car, I remember in driver's ed, we were told to always check your mirrors, fasten your seatbelt. There's a little routine. And part of that is making sure your car is functioning before you hit on the gas. Yeah. That you're not getting warning lights, those kind of things. We don't have those consistently built into our AI tools right now. There's some of that. It's different for every tool. Depends on who you're buying it from. We have to get that standardized. We have to have some kind of operator's ability to know if it's functioning right. You should be able to look at the output because you can't possibly monitor the inner workings well enough. Not at our level. I mean, there are people who can, and they're busy creating all this wonderful stuff. But we can monitor the output, and that output should be verifiable. We should be able to quickly run a fact check on that. And I'm not sure, it depends on what you're trying to do. But there should be ways that we can do that better. And we have to insist on it. We're the consumers. We have to keep asking, how will I know it's working right? Give me something I can do.
Absolutely. Could do it side by side. So do something that develop these spreadsheets, and then you could use a tool after the fact at first to
Mhm.
see, is it coming up with the right information? And as you
Yeah, you could
continue to
run
do it, then you could become more
you'd have
comfortable
to
using the
wait for
tool.
the
Yes.
old one.
Yes.
Pilot.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so as we are ending this incredible episode today with such great information, for our audience that is listening today and they want to get started in adapting and incorporating all AI can do to help their business, what advice would you give them?
Well, there are a lot of places you can go, and it can be difficult to know, well, where do I start? You can find courses on a number of platforms. You can find them at colleges and junior colleges and community centers. So, but very few that have been designed for the learning profession. So you're going to pick up definitely some skills, but not necessarily the practical. And here's how you could use it. So, for example, you could learn how to make a video, and you're going to also learn how to make it viral in social media, which might not be what you want. What you're trying to do is build a training step by step. You want a different output. So what I've done is I actually have collected my classes and videos, and I'm launching a little platform where people could go on and learn about it. And if you guys want to cut this out, I actually had meant to suggest that I'd be happy to offer a promotional discount to our TTA listeners, but I wasn't sure if it's, I had to ask first if it's our consultants or clients and how we would market that if you want to be a part of that. But I would love to be able to mention it and say, here's my link. Or I'll just say, if you want a list of courses, I'll give you some of mine and some of other people that I recommend. Now that's maybe the safest way to go.
I appreciate that context. It's good information so people know how and when that they can get started on this because times are changing, my friend. Let's get on the train because you want to be a part of it. Don't want to be left behind. Let's move on to some like non-AI generated stuff because whether you believe me or not, I actually crafted all 10 of these questions by myself. So we are ready for the TTA 10 part of the show. David, can you hit me with some tunes?
It's the TTA 10 final questions for our guest.
Okay, Margie, it's the TTA 10. Everybody's favorite part of the show, at least I like to think it is, but we have 10 extra questions for you. Okay. We got 90 seconds on the clock. There are no wrong answers. There are right ones, but there are no wrong ones. Answer it as quickly as possible, as reactive as possible, because the point is to bring a little bit of fun and flavor to the show. So are you ready, Margie? Because I am.
I am.
All right. David, countdown, please.
Yes, 90 seconds on the TTA 10 clock. Beginning now.
Margie, where do you go when you need your sanctuary and peace at the end of the day?
I walk my dog in the neighborhood.
Love it. You've been hypnotized to do an impression of your favorite animal every time someone says your name. Ready? Margie!
Bark!
What's 5 minus 2?
Hey.
What's a skill that's on your list for things to learn in 2025?
Of how to ride my electric bike without crashing.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you go today?
I am right where I want to be. I'm in Green Valley, Arizona.
Fabulous, Margie. What's a movie that always makes you laugh no matter how many times you've seen it before?
Buckaroo Banzai in the fifth dimension.
What's your favorite color?
Purple.
If your life was a board game, which one would it be?
Monopoly.
If you could hire any celebrity as your personal assistant, who would you choose?
Well, I don't know about his qualifications, but just because I was a huge fan of the 10th Doctor, it would be David Tennant.
If you weren't a learning consultant, what would you be doing for your career?
I'd probably be teaching. That's how I started.
Love that. All right, Margie, there's 10 questions. David.
That was fast.
He said, well, yeah. That we did that the 90 seconds. We got to make it happen, Margie. Can we get a verdict, David, please?
We've been accused on the TTA 10 of fudging the numbers and fudging the time, but I can tell you 1 minute, 29.57 seconds.
Shut up.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
He showed us the timer, people. Okay. We saw it here. And I think we did record it. So,
yes.
When
And
you
we do
think about
have
all my other answers. That was amazing that I could do it that quick.
We do have a salute for Margie. Margie, according to some research that I've done, the first book you ever learned was, well, I'm going to ask you. Do you remember what the first book you ever learned was?
It was a Dr. Seuss book.
Okay.
The Cat in the Hat.
Cat in the Hat. Okay. With that in mind, let's take a look at the following salute to Marge.
In a school far away, on a desk in a chair, sat young Margie Meacham with a puzzled, lost stare. She scribbled, she wobbled, she mixed up her letters. Her teachers all frowned, said she must do much better. But Margie was bright. Oh yes, this was true. She just needed a way to see learning anew. Her sister read stories, Dr. Seuss by the pile, and soon Margie's frown turned into a smile. She read and she learned, she studied so grand, with notebooks and notes always close at hand. Through high school, through college, she worked, oh so clever, graduating with honors. Her struggle? Not ever. Then off to a job. Oh, what a surprise. She typed like the wind before bosses' wide eyes. She sold and she trained, made knowledge take flight, and taught with such passion. Her future looked bright. From sales to tech, from books to AI, she followed her path up to the sky. She spoke and she taught. She wrote and designed, blending science with learning in ways most refined. She built brainy bots. Help learners succeed. With AI and neurons, she planted a seed. For training and coaching, for skills big and small, her bots and her books help learners stand tall. So if ever you wonder, what path should I take? Just look at dear Margie and steps she did make. She learned and she leaped, she stumbled, she soared, and now helps the world with knowledge adored. So go chase your calling, be bold and explore. For learning's an adventure, there's always much more.
Margie
Ooh, that
Meacham.
was
Margie.
Margie.
Margie Meacham.
Margie.
Margie, Margie. Margie.
Well, you are a true pioneer in this industry and in
Yes.
AI. So absolutely fantastic. Thank you so
You
much for being our
guys.
guest.
Can I have a copy of that, David?
Oh, absolutely. That's
sure.
your parting gift.
Beautiful.
For more information on how AI can support your learning and development needs, visit us at thetrainingassociates.com. We'll see you later.